Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, September 16th. I'm John Weigell with Mark Dent, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. PepsiCo's stock has plummeted 20% over the last 2 years, while Coca-Cola soared 15%. And now investors are demanding radical changes with billions of dollars at stake. The iconic blue can that once challenged Coke for soda supremacy has slipped to 4th place in U.S. sales, trailing behind Dr. Pepper and even Sprite. So how did Pepsi fall so far behind? We'll get into that and the biggest headlines in business and tech right after this. Starting us off today, Opendoor, the real estate platform, has a new board chair, Keith Rabois, and he's coming in hot. He told CNBC that he hates remote work. He can't fathom what most employees do and suggested a workforce reduction of up to 85%. And Mark, we've heard a lot about Opendoor in the recent months in becoming kind of a meme stock.
Right. I mean, its stock has just exploded since July. I mean, it's like a straight line. It's gone so far up. But interestingly enough, as CNBC pointed out in a news story kind of about this CEO, talking about all these changes, is that it is still a cash-burning, low-margin business.
Yeah.
So you can, of course, lay off 85% of your staff. As the CEO, Keith Rabois, says, we don't need more than 200 of them. But you could also maybe try to, make the business good. Instead of having just being this cash-burning business that it is.
Yeah.
Because, as we've said on here a lot, the statistics show that layoffs can be a nice little boost for a bit, but not for the long term.
Totally.
But this is just what CEOs are doing now. They're trying to create these pretty negative environments, fearful environments for people to work in.
Yeah, very hustle culture-y, very busy work-y. It seems like that's kind of the direction that Opendoor is taking, along with a lot of other companies we see nowadays, isn't exactly too far from what everybody else is doing. So, I mean, it makes sense. It's just crazy to me how their stock went so far up, and kind of this is the response to it of, let's chop most of our staff, but we'll see what happens.
Right. Instead of investing.
Right.
A lot of times when your stock is up, you'll invest more. But again, their stock is up for reasons that frankly don't make any sense, just beyond just speculation.
Yeah,
so
exactly. All right, so moving over to Tesla, a couple of news hits today as Elon Musk bought $1 billion worth of Tesla shares, causing the stock to lift over 6% yesterday. On the other hand, the company just caught off its most affordable Cybertruck model just 5 months after launch due to its plummeting sales. So two parts of the same story there. Next, the Albanian government has a new minister in charge of rooting out corruption, Diella, who is a chatbot. It's been a meteoric rise for the AI. Initially, Citizen's virtual assistant inside the government services portal before its history-making appointment as the first cabinet member who is not physically present, per Prime Minister Edi Rama. In addition to playing corruption monitor, Diella will also be the last word on awarding government contracts. We'll see how that works out for Albania. From there, we go to the White House. President Trump will be speaking with China's President Xi on Friday regarding the future of TikTok. Reportedly, the Trump administration has already announced that a deal outline has been reached for the app. So it looks like after a year of back and forth, there will be no ban, but we'll see for sure on Friday. And finally, Tyson Foods is going to eliminate another chemical from its lineup this year. Early in 2025, the company already removed synthetic dyes from its domestic branded products, and now it's looking to chop high fructose corn syrup from its offerings by the end of the year. This brought on by some things in the Trump administration and RFK, Mark. This seems to be a step in a positive direction for American foods.
Yeah, I mean, definitely potentially. And it depends on what you really believe about high fructose corn syrup and whether it's actually any worse than sugar, which is, very much up for debate. In fact, studies would indicate that there is no difference. And a few would say otherwise, of course. Mm-hmm. But either way, the Trump administration has clearly had a little bit of good fortune in getting companies to kind of change their sort of ways. Right. Like you said, they've already eliminated one chemical, high fructose corn syrup now. Coca-Cola has said that it will release a cane sugar type of soda here in the U.S. It didn't say it was going to get rid of high fructose corn syrup or anything. But I think what's really interesting is what kind of standoff there might end up being, because High fructose corn syrup is a very much favored ingredient by the corn industry, which has a lot of power. Agriculture has just a ton of lobbying power here in the U.S. And so there might end up being this sort of standoff where you have this corn industry going against, frankly, the White House, companies that are considering getting rid of it. This is going to become an even bigger story, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess where all these corn farmers will then look to distribute corn, if not to high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, because most corn that is produced is not actual corn that people eat. The vast majority of it is either feed for cattle or like ethanol is actually the vast majority of it. And then like a little bit that goes to high fructose corn syrup. It's not a huge part of it, but they still fight over it. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll make a dent nonetheless. Okay, and for more stories like that, you can subscribe to the show. We'll have more for you tomorrow. But right now, we're talking Pepsi. So, Mark, what is going on in the world of Pepsi?
Pepsi, by the way, is still using high fructose corn syrup.
Yes, they are.
They've not changed any to sugar yet here in the U.S. But it's been a rough few years for Pepsi. And Pepsi, the soft drink, is, part of PepsiCo, which also owns Frito-Lay.
Doritos. Yeah, it's a bunch of brands.
Yeah, it's a huge brand because, Frito-Lay in its own right has so many different parts of that. And so their stock has been down about 20% over the last couple of years. If you compare that to their huge rival, at least soft drink-wise, Coca-Cola is up 15%. And Elliott Management, which, that name will create nightmares for almost any CEO. And Elliott Management is now involved in Pepsi. So
yeah, they are. And the market caps are also very different. Pepsi at $200 billion, Coke at about $300 billion. And I remember in the 90s growing up, in the early 2000s, the Pepsi Coke was kind of neck and neck. You have people that prefer one, you have people that prefer the other. Coke usually wins out in the end. But I saw it for a while as a direct competition. And in the early 2000s, there was a lot of effort by Pepsi to get into specifically the music space and advertise that way and advertise with like artists and whatnot. And Coke is more in the sports space, it seems. So they each were playing their games and placing their ads in places where they could connect with an audience. But it seems that Pepsi has really fallen off in these past few years, at least the soft drink part of it has. So why do you think Pepsi's fallen so far down behind even now Dr. Pepper and Sprite?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that marketing part, which I think is a part of it. In the 90s, when you and I were growing up, Pepsi, they always had like the Pepsi generation kind of motto, trying to align themselves with youth culture. That in the 80s, they literally had Michael Jackson in their advertisements. In the 90s, they had, like you said, other musicians. It just kind of fit the culture, I think, in a way that is very hard for any sort of soda brand to fit now. And so I think because of that, you can't be a huge corporation and be a disruptor. People are too clever for that and just be putting out TV ads and stuff. You have to be a lot smarter. If you just look at the marketing spend, Coca-Cola's is a bit higher than Pepsi's now even. And Coca-Cola has always had the more we're the classic kind of beverage. And I think that's more appealing for people who still drink soda, because keep in mind, soda consumption has gone down by a lot. So they're both dealing with that. And I just think Coca-Cola has had a lot of advantages over Pepsi in marketing and getting its word out.
Yeah, one of their big successes Coke has had is Coke Zero. I mean, there was a time in the past few years that Coke Zero actually was outselling Coca-Cola proper. So they have these other variations of their product that Pepsi just doesn't exactly seem to have. But Pepsi, it seems for a long time, the soda has been really leaning on its Frito-Lay friends.
Yeah.
Being, of course, the big household Doritos, all that stuff. They historically have been doing quite well. But as we've talked about recently, inflation and other factors in the economy have also made snacks a bit of a tough business for them as well.
Right. The advantage of having a huge corporation, a sprawling corporation that Pepsi does, where you have Frito-Lay, you have Quaker, and whatever else, is that when one is not doing that well, then the other one can kind of lift you up. And as you said, that's what was happening with Frito-Lay. It's now facing some issues of its own. But in addition to that, the negative to when you're this big, sprawling conglomerate is that you can't really focus in on any one part as much as you'd like. And even though those conglomerates, they say that, oh, we can have efficiencies like our HR department or, just some sort of back of the house thing that you can like kind of merge together. At the end of the day, it's very questionable whether that works. We've seen over the last 25, 30 years, just conglomerates unwind. There are not that many conglomerates anymore. When you think of like the biggest companies, like I was trying to think of one earlier that like, hey, man, is there a really good example of a successful conglomerate right now? And it's like, oh man, Amazon is this huge company, but they're really just focused on like a couple things, Amazon Web Services, and then, their own shipping and distribution channels, and then their online store. Whereas, Pepsi has all these different parts of it, and Wall Street does not like conglomerates anymore. They haven't for a long time.
Yeah, and it seems like Elliott Management doesn't either, because Elliott is a big investor in PepsiCo with about $4 billion shoot into the company. And it's advising that PepsiCo kind of breaks up the business a little bit, breaks it up, or either sheds some businesses that it feels like no longer are serving the overall brand and the overall goals here. Like Quaker is one of them that's mentioned by Elliott as a brand that's not exactly performing as well as it could be, and they could just get rid of it and focus more on the well-performing brands, which I mean is definitely something that could help them at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the other thing that Elliott wants, which David Weiner pointed out from the Wall Street Journal, is that Elliott wants Pepsi to spin off its bottling distribution sort of company.
Right.
20 years ago, Coke and Pepsi both bought back their own bottlers, but Coke then spun it off. And, David Weiner from the Wall Street Journal kind of suggests that this is like a huge advantage for Coke, is the fact that they spun that off and they don't have to like worry about the whole
distribution processes, right?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And the margins show that Coke has significantly higher margins than Pepsi when it comes to this. And that's really important. And that could be another thing that Elliott wants them to do, and just focus on the brands that actually work in addition to that, which Pepsi has been struggling to do in the past few years.
For sure. And when Elliott wants something, it doesn't always happen with the companies that they kind of sink their teeth into, but it does happen a lot. One example from just a few years ago was that Elliott bought a pretty big stake in AT&T. And AT&T had essentially tried to become a conglomerate. They had bought Warner Brothers. Right. And so it was like this weird match that no one really thought worked, of like a phone company, a communications company with like a Hollywood brand. And Elliott Management invests, and they're like, gotta slim down. And yeah, they unloaded Warner Brothers pretty darn quickly to Discovery.
Yeah.
So when Elliott gets involved, things tend to change.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the big challenge for PepsiCo's CEO, who's Ramon Laguarta. He's kind of coming in with all these problems and this old company that desperately needs a refresh. And he's worked at Tropicana. He acquired Papi and Siete Foods. So he's trying to really turn things around. But can he and kind of appease Elliott Management as he turn things around? That's, I guess, the big question going forward.
Yeah, for sure. So are you a Coke or a Pepsi drinker, John?
I gotta say, I've just never been like a fan of just like a regular cola. I've never been much of a soda guy. Mountain Dew is like my one and only. What about you?
I'm Coke. If I'm at a restaurant and I order a Coke and they're like, well, we only have Pepsi, then I just won't get it.
You abstain.
Yeah, I abstain.
You're one of those guys. Yeah.
Very loyal. Although I like Dr. Pepper probably better than any of them. So
I think I like the Dr. Pepper brand maybe the best. It's like the most fun and exciting and interesting. I don't know. It's just got some edge to it that the others don't, in my opinion.
Yeah, 23 flavors. Plus they have that thing every year at college football games where the kids have to throw footballs into a garbage can to get free tuition or whatever. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But good to know that if we ever go out to dinner, I got to bring you to a Coke Forward restaurant.
Yeah, please.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of HubSpot Media. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get signed up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. We'll catch you later, everybody. Guys, with the launch of Loop Marketing, Kip's giving you the ultimate prompt library. Over 100 AI prompts that walk you through each stage of the Loop Marketing method. They're designed to help you spot growth opportunities in an AI world. This isn't just another collection of prompts. It'll guide you into the new era of marketing. You can get it for free at the link in our show notes. Seriously, stop right now, look at those show notes, and tap that link.
Here's what blows my mind. Most people are sitting around waiting for their boss to give them a raise, while millionaires are building income streams in their spare time. Entrepreneur and creator Marina Magilko cracked the code on this. She built more than 10 income streams that now pull in over $100,000 a month. She shared the secret sauce with our team, so now we're sharing it with you, exactly how she did it. This guide gives you practical step-by-step strategies you can actually implement. So just pick just one income stream from her guide and watch what happens. Stop what you're doing right now and grab it in the show notes 6 months from now, and you'll be glad you did.